Hello everyone, welcome to MBA Karo. So today we have day 20 of hot summer and we are going to cover the topic of para summary. So para summary is one of the 4 VA topics which is tested in the VARC section, and it is like one of the questions wherein you are given a passage about 100 to 150 words followed by 4 summaries, and you have to choose the best of the 4 summaries. Okay, so there are few factors that one must keep in mind while choosing the right answer, because like the options may look close to you. Okay, so what are the things one you should see is the correct option should capture or main points. Okay, so if the author talks about certain things, the summary should ideally capture all main points. It should not be too generic or too specific. It should not be too generic, it should not be too specific. Okay, or like these, there are some signs of incorrect options, like sometimes the summaries are too generic, sometimes they are too specific, sometimes they talk about only one of the aspects, they ignore the main point, or sometimes they are just opposite of what is being said in the passage. So these are generally the wrong options if you avoid them. So in these questions you solve them by elimination, by seeing that what mistake this particular option has. Okay, so we will see some questions on para summary in this video. If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for great content on MBA preparation. So this is the schedule. We are on day 20. We have finished 2/3 of this series, and I am sure this series must have benefited you till now, and we will be having 10 more sessions in the coming 10 days. So please don't forget to watch all the videos of this series. In case you are preparing for CAT and are looking for a structured course, you can enroll in our CAT batch and get all these benefits. So let's start the series. Before that, just to inform that please ensure that you try to answer the questions on your own and evaluate yourself, and in the comments of this video do let me know how many of the questions you got correct. So read the question, answer it, and then look at the solution later. So here's the first passage that we have. It says that there is a still great deal of prestige to be had by joining the elite club of moonlanders. After their successful missions, India and Japan could very much claim to be good global space players. Okay, so it says that both India and Japan have landed on the moon and now they are successful space players. A nation with a successful space industry can bring a boost to the economy through jobs and innovation. But the moon race offers an even bigger prize, its resources. While the lunar terrain looks rather barren, it contains minerals including rare earth metals like iron and titanium, and helium too, which is used in everything from superconductors to medical equipment. Estimates for the value of all this vary widely from billions to quadrillions. So it's easy to see why some see the moon as a place to make lots of money. So what it says is India and Japan have recently landed on the moon, and now they have become a part of that elite club of moonlanders. Okay. Now if you read this carefully, it talks about two things, right? A nation with a successful space industry. So obviously these are part of successful space industry. They can bring boost to economy. So successful industry, that means there is a boost to economy. Okay, but moon race, this moon landing has bigger advantage. Okay, so basically like space industry, moon is one part of space industry. Okay, so space means if you go to the earth, that's all space. Moon is one specific part. So it says that moon landing brings a bigger advantage. Okay, so if you are into space industry, you have technology and innovation, that is one part. But if you are part of moon landing country, you have bigger advantage because of some metals found over there. So it is full of these special metals like iron, titanium, helium, right? So they have various uses. You have access to all those. So you can make billions, trillions and quadrillions from it. Okay. So what is the summary? Being a major space player can help create jobs and innovation. this is a partial thing. Okay, it talks about that yes, if you are a part of a big space player, but there is a bigger picture missing, which is about the moon. So it does not talk about the moon exploration. A successful space industry can help the economy and give a fillip to mineral extraction. So successful space industry, mineral extraction is fine, but the link is missing here, right? The link of moon is like moon. The passage specifically talks about moon landing, which is missing in this. So the element of moon landing should be present in the summary. So this was an easy question. Successful space industries can help that. So all these three talk about the partial part, which is successful space industry, but the moon part is missing in all of these. So fourth option says countries that are moon landers can not only help grow their economies with their space programs, but also be able to extract moon's vast mineral resources. So this captures all the elements. It talks about moon exploration as well. So they are successful in both things, since like moon landing is a part of space exploration only. So if they have gone to moon, they must have had a good space exploration industry, and as a result they can have economic boost. At the same time, if they land on moon, they have access to extract all these mineral resources. So this is the right summary. So this was a very easy one, because all three options, the other three options did not talk about moon at all, which was an important part missing. Okay, so here's the next one. It says that like just as with studies of the effectiveness of online education for students in kindergarten through 12th grade, much of the pre-pandemic research into online higher education concluded that students in online programs did worse than students in in-person courses. So there is some research that suggested that students in online programs did worse than students in in-person courses. So a person studying online, that they tend to do worse than in the one who do it in. So on average they had lower grades, higher dropout rates, and poor performance in subsequent classes. So obviously, like poor performance, characteristics of poor performance. However, many of these studies suffered from what scholars described as self-selection bias. Okay. What does self-selection bias mean? So whenever you conduct a study, right, so it has to be an unbiased study. The sampling size should be random. It should not include some specific set of people, right? So there is some selection bias in the study. Maybe the study was conducted on some specific kind of people that gave us this result. Okay. So what does it suggest? It says that in this case, the fact that people who chose to take courses online also shared other inherent characteristics skewing the results. So they had, these online course people had other inherent characteristics. Okay, so it was not a unbiased study, it had some bias. And we'll read further. Students who enrolled in online higher education programs before COVID tended to be older and studying part-time. So these people were older and studying part-time. Okay, so basically this study cannot be treated as a conclusive one, because it included only these set of people, right, who were older and studying part-time. It did not include full-time people. Okay, so it says that they had often jobs and families, so obviously these people would not have sufficient time to study, right? So if they do not have sufficient time to study, they are likely to get lower grades in the examination. Okay, so that was a bias, that they selected only these set of people. The study was on only of these kind of people to conclude that online education is worse than in-person education, right? That's what the study suggests. We would expect a part-time student with other obligations to perform less well. So that is expected, right? If a person is studying part-time, there are other obligations. A person is going on a job, has to look after his or her family. So definitely they will tend to score less on the examinations. So based on this, you cannot conclude that people who study on online programs generally do worse than people who take in-person courses. So that is the flaw in this study. Okay, let us look at the summaries. First says, older students as well as those studying part-time tend to be worse students than young students enrolled in full-time courses. Okay, now these are close options. Now okay, this could be one part. It says that older students and part-time students, so we are generalizing them. right, tend to be worse than young students enrolled in full-time courses. Okay, so we are making a generalization. Second says, although there is evidence that students in online courses fared worse than those in physical classes, the data cannot be conclusive. Most online courses are attended by older people who are studying part-time, and therefore they tend to be worse academically. Now, this is some most online courses. Right? It does not say that most online courses are, see, it never said that most online courses are attended by older people. It never said that. It said that the study that was conducted was on these people. Okay, so this is wrong. It does not say that most online courses are taken up by older people. Okay. Part-time older students with other responsibilities tend to perform poorly as compared to those enrolled full-time in physical classes. Yes, that is partial. That is correct. Okay, if the people are part-time old students with other study responsibilities, they tend to perform poorly. Older students as well as those studying part-time tend to be worse students than young students enrolled in full-time courses. So A and D talk about same thing, more or less the same thing, that people who are old and are part-time tend to do worse than full-time people who attend physical classes. Okay. And if you look at point B, it says, although there is evidence the student in online courses fared worse than in physical classes, the data cannot be said to be conclusive. See, this entire passage is about a case study which was conducted on students pursuing online as well as offline courses, right? And what was the conclusion of this study? That this study had a selection bias, right, which is mentioned over here. Basically, the study that was done was not done with a right complete set of people to get the conclusion. So it says there is evidence. Yes, there is evidence. Okay, students in online courses fared worse. So what is that evidence? This particular study. That is an evidence that these students, they in the online courses, they fared worse. The data cannot be said to be conclusive. So data is not conclusive. Why? Because it is a biased data. It is a data based on only certain set of people, not a complete set of people. So it focuses only, the data which was collected was only for the students who were old and were doing part-time jobs or had family. So that is why it is not a conclusive data. So it says, so basically it captures this thing that data cannot be conclusive. The study part is missing in these two. So okay, although these also talk about the same thing, right thing, okay, they miss the study part. One of the important aspects of this paragraph is the research study that was conducted on students. Alright, so here's the next one. It says that Homo sapiens appeared as a separate species about 3 lakh years ago. Homo sapiens are human beings. During our entire tenure, the earth has been undergoing a series of ice ages, long periods of intense glaciation, where the planet was cold and dry, followed by shorter interglacial periods that were warm and moist. Throughout most of those 300 millennia, human beings existed as bands of nomadic hunter-gatherers. It was only after the ice melted at the beginning of the current interglacial period that we humans invented a new way of being human, farming. It was indeed a revolution, changing every aspect of being human, from how many people we might see in our lifetime as to how we spend those lifetimes. Okay, so this passage basically says that humans appeared around 3 lakh years ago. Most of the phase has been the ice age. Okay, so it says, let's say this is 3 lakh years ago. For this long duration there was ice, and now for a very short duration, like compared to the ice age, this is a very short duration, and in this age the man invented farming and leading a better, you would say that, revolutionary life. Okay, so in the ice age farming was not invented. That's what is mentioned here, right? So it says that during our entire tenure, the earth has been undergoing a series of ice ages, long periods of intense glaciation. So there have been long period of this glaciation and all, with a shorter interglacial periods. So in that 3 lakh years, most of it has been ice age. Only short period has been of non-ice age. So majority of human existence has lived in the ice age. And then it talks about that ice melted. Only after the ice melted, we invented farming, and this brought about a revolution in how humans lived on earth. Let's look at the summaries. First says Homo sapiens emerged 3 lakh years ago and immediately became family. That is wrong, right? It said that it did not begin immediately, right? Only after the ice melted. So completely wrong. So sometimes summaries would be just opposite of what is written in the passage. Throughout 300 millennia, millennia means 1000. So 300,000 years, humans have always been farmers. Okay, again wrong. Right? Farmers, they became only when the ice melted. So first two options are easily eliminated. Homo sapiens appeared 3 lakh years ago, experienced long ice ages and shorter warm periods. Given that long periods of ice, shorter interglacial periods. Okay, so shorter warm periods, but only began farming after ice melted, revolutionizing human life. Covers all the aspects of the paragraph. Right? Let's look at the last option also. Homo sapiens appearing 3 lakh years ago were mostly stationary during ice ages, okay, and turned to nomadic lifestyle when the ice melted, leading to farming. So mostly stationary during ice ages. This is out of the passage, right? It never says that humans were mostly stationary during the ice ages. They did not move anywhere. Okay, so it is basically saying that like this is something which is not mentioned in the passage, right? So the correct summary is C. So two summaries opposite of what is mentioned. One of the summaries, it is beyond the scope of the passage. It never mentions that they were mostly stationary during the, they were stationary, that is nowhere mentioned. Okay, only turn to nomadic lifestyles. Nomadic lifestyles, these are not mentioned anywhere. Okay, so this is the right summary. In their paper, Loeb and Bailey argue that the only way to object could be accelerated to the speeds observed was if it were extremely thin and very large, like a sail. They estimated that its thickness had to be between 0.3 to 0.9 millimeters, which is extremely thin. After confirming that such an object is robust enough to withstand the hardships of interstellar travel, Loeb and Bailey conclude that it couldn't possibly be a solar system object like an asteroid or a comet, being thus of interstellar origin. The question is whether it is a natural or artificial object. This is where the paper ventures into interesting but far-fetched speculation. So basically there are two scientists, Loeb and Bailey. They are studying you would say an object in the space, okay, which is, the dimension is given that it's a very small object, 0.3 to 0.9 millimeters. Okay, it's extremely thin. So there is a minute object. Now they are saying that it is not. So it says that the only way the object could be accelerated is if it were extremely thin and very large, like a sail. Okay, and thickness had to be between this, which is extremely thin. After confirming that such an object is robust enough to withstand the hardships of interstellar travel. Interstellar travel means travel in the between the stars in the space. Okay, they conclude that it couldn't possibly be a solar system object. So it says that the object couldn't be a solar system object like an asteroid or comet. Okay, so it is of interstellar origin. So maybe some other stars, it is found in some other stars. Okay, the question is whether it's a natural or artificial object. So they are questioning whether it is natural or artificial. This is where the paper ventures into interesting but far-fetched speculation. So there is a speculation. What is the speculation? That whether it is natural or artificial object. They say that it is not a part of solar system, right? It is an interstellar origin. So basically it has come from some other star. Okay, so it is not of this solar system. So that's what they have come to the conclusion to. Loeb and Bailey suggest the object could be a solar sail due to its thinness and acceleration, leading them to speculate it might be an artificial object rather than a natural one. So it they talk about that it could be an artificial, because natural one, it is like if it were a natural one, it cannot withstand this. So it says that the thickness have to be between this after confinement is robust enough to withstand. So it may be, and it says might be, they are on a speculation, right? They are not sure that it is an artificial or a natural object, but considering the size of the object, they speculate that it may not be a natural object. Okay, so and it says that it was very extremely thin and very large, like a sail. So it is like a solar sail. Okay, so could be an answer. Let's see. Loeb and Bailey concluded the object is an asteroid or comet from our solar system. So they say that it is not from our solar system. Okay, so it is saying that it could possibly be a solar system object. So they are against this idea. So obviously it is against it. The paper by Loeb and Bailey dismisses the possibility of object being of interstellar origin and speculates it's a large thin sail with the old solar system. So it does not dismiss any possibility, right? It is a speculation. They are still figuring out whether it is a natural or artificial object, and it is not like it in fact talks about a possibility of interstellar origin. It is not dismissing the possibility, right? It says that it could be possibly be a solar system object. In fact, it is an interstellar object. The object studied by Loeb and Bailey is robust and thin, which suggests it is an asteroid or comet. So it is saying that it couldn't be an asteroid or comet. Okay, they are saying that it is not an asteroid or comet, right? So it does not suggest it's an asteroid or comet. So against it. So then this remains. It says that they suggest the object could be a solar sail. Okay, because of its thinness and acceleration, leading them to speculate it might be an artificial object rather than a natural one. So they speculate that it's an artificial object, okay, not concluding anything, and it is definitely, they say that it is not an asteroid or comet. So when you talk about asteroid and comet, okay, that is against it. Okay, again these two talk about asteroid or comet from solar system. So they dismiss this possibility that it is like basically they are saying that it is not from the solar system, it is an interstellar object. Okay, and there is a possibility that it could be an artificial object rather than a natural one. So that is why option A is the appropriate summary. So I hope you are enjoying this session thus far. So please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and please watch this entire series to boost your CAT preparation. So here's the next one. It says that territory in indigenous struggles entails more than land ownership. It often becomes a material value that hosts fights against resource extraction. To talk of the territory is to inaugurate dialogue between various indigenous peoples and between the indigenous and their settler neighbors about self-determination, co-managing resources and apportioning legal entitlements. In India as well, marginalized communities have highlighted their profound association with where they live to combat the militant managerial state's hunger for natural resources that lie beneath their sacred hills and rivers. But when these justified claims are redirected against rival groups for control over scarce resources, indigeneity becomes a morbid weapon. So it says that, like, when people talk about indigenous people mean belonging to a particular place, the original people of that particular place. So the territory in indigenous struggles entails more than land ownership. So land ownership, a minor, you can say it's a minor fight between indigenous people, right? If there are two people living on hills, if they are finding for land ownership, that's a minor fight. What is the minor? It becomes a material value that hosts fights against resource extraction. Okay, so minor thing is they are fighting for land. Major thing is they are fighting for resources that are present in that land. Okay, to talk of the territory to inaugurate dialogue between various indigenous peoples and between the indigenous and the settler neighbors about self-determination, co-managing resources. So they fight for resources. Okay, so you must have heard, like seen in some movies and series also, people have control over mines, right? Mafias and all, right? They have control over all those natural resources because that's an ultimate source of wealth. So instead of just land, people fight for these resources. The controllers of these mines and all those things, right, they are very powerful. Okay, so people fight for these things, and their fight is not limited to themselves, right? It says that marginalized communities have highlighted their profound associations with where they live to combat the militant managerial state's hunger for natural resources that lie beneath their sacred hills. So they do not just fight with them among themselves, they also have the fight with the government. So it says that militant managerial state's hunger. So basically the government is also claiming on those resources, right? So obviously government has the claim, but the local people will fight against the government also because it belongs to their area. Okay, so if you ever hear of these things, wherever there are mines and all, right, there are always fights, isn't it? So if you talk about Naxalites, why do they fight? Because of these resources. Okay, so there is always fight with the people among themselves to claim for those resources, to gain control over those resources, plus fight with the government also because they claim that these resources belong to their specific land, their sacred land. So it says that they are sacred hills and rivers. But when these justified claims are redirected against rival groups for control over scarce resources, indigeneity becomes a morbid weapon. So it is a powerful thing. Okay. So let's look at the summaries. Indigenous struggles entail fighting against resource extraction rather than just land ownership. Correct? Right? It says that rather than just land ownership. So this is a minor thing. Okay, this is the major fight. Fighting against resource extraction. That is the major fight which is mentioned in the passage. But this struggle is exacerbated. Exacerbate means to become worse. So this battle becomes worse by rival groups fighting for control over resources by claiming indigeneity. So it says that when these justified claims are basically the claims by these rival groups, okay, marginalized communities, their profound association. So it talks about the rival groups. So when these rival groups fight over it, the fight becomes very intense. Okay, so that is what this summarizes. I mean, in fact, it summarizes the entire thing, right? So people fight, the indigenous people fight for resources rather than just for land, and this fight becomes intense when there are rival groups. Okay, you must have seen like some movies and web series, etc., wherein there are some rival groups, they are fighting against each other. Why? Because of control over some resources. Okay, so that is what it mentions here. Indigenous struggles are not for land ownership or resource extraction from their lands, but rather for dominance of it. It does not say that the struggles are not for land ownership. Okay, so there is struggle for land ownership and resource extraction. So this shows only one part, right? Dominance against other indigenous people. So this, see, there is struggle for land ownership also. Okay, although that's a minor part, but there is struggle for land ownership. It is also for resource extraction, and the biggest of them is when you start making rival groups. Okay, so there are three things. First, small people fighting for land, then people extracting, and then there are formation of rival groups. So it dismisses the first two cases. The struggle for indigenous groups is mainly against the state. So it is not saying that it is only against the state. Okay, so yes, the state wishes to appropriate resources from their lands, but that is not mentioned. So it dismisses other struggles, right? It says that there are several struggles. Against the state is also one of the struggles, but that is not the main struggle. Scarce resources compel indigenous communities to use their indigeneity as a gruesome tool for claiming ownership of these resources. See, we are not saying that the resources are scarce. Right? It never says the resources are scarce. Maybe the resources are abundant. Okay? The passage does not say scarce resources. Yes, you may assume that the resources are scarce and people are fighting for it, but it never mentions that the resources are scarce. So this is not a part of this, and also it does not completely cover the whole idea. The whole idea is people fight for land, and the bigger fight is for resource extraction, and the fight becomes even worse when there are rival groups for resources extraction in a community. So that is why the correct summary is option A. Here's the next passage. It is about success through education. So it says the idea that many people considered highly educated and successful are actually completely uneducated work. These requires a definition of educated that excludes instrumental motives. As soon as you are studying as a means to end the wealth or prestige, you are no longer pursuing an education. A radically democratic vision of education in turn requires a certain view of human nature, one in which, as Aristotle claims at the opening of his Metaphysics, all humans by nature desire to know. Poverty impedes this characteristically human activity of knowing, the desire for which is not limited to small cognitive elite. Okay, so like it talks about, like it says that what we generalize as educated is actually not educated, right? We consider education as someone who has studied, right? But our main motive of, unfortunately, the main motive of most of the people after education is not to know things, right? It is about to remove poverty, right? So most of us, why are we studying, right? Most of you, why are you preparing for CAT and other MBA exams? Because you want to get higher package, isn't it? That's the truth. You cannot deny this truth, right? So it is philosophically, most of you, why do you target only IIMs? Why don't you target average colleges? Right? The top, why do people target those top tier colleges? Because they see CTC. आप कोई भी कॉलेज देखते हो, ये आप क्या देखते हो? वहाँ का CTC कितना है, एवरेज CTC कितना है, right? So that is human nature, right? So people are successful, they have some other motive, right? So it is not basically true education. That's what the passage says. What is true education? Means to know. So it says that Aristotle describes all humans by nature desire to know. So the real value of education too is to gain knowledge, not just to remove poverty. Remove poverty means become rich. Okay. So it says as soon as you are studying as a means of end the wealth or prestige, you are no longer pursuing an education. So that's what the main idea of the passage is. Let us look at the summaries. Education for work purposes is not a genuine education, and this is aggravated by poverty. Okay, so it partially captures it. Okay, education for work purposes is not real education. That's what is mentioned. Let us look at others. The desire for knowledge is universal, although it is constrained by poverty, but education without a purpose is not genuine education. Okay, so it says that yes, it is restricted by poverty. Desire for knowledge is universal. Okay, and education without a purpose is not genuine education. That is also true. Genuine education implies a desire. So first of all, it talks about like it talks about education. It does not talk about the desire for education. So partially it is partially correct, not capturing the entire parts. Genuine education implies a desire for knowledge, and this trait is universal amongst humans. Okay, so it also captures these things: genuine education, desire for knowledge, and universal trait. Okay. Last says education for a particular purpose is not education, but rather knowing for the sake of knowing. And although this trait is universal among humans, it is restricted by poverty. So the trait is restricted by poverty, that we agree. It says that so poverty impedes this characteristically human activity. So it means that there is a human characteristic that people want to know things, but poverty reduces this, and as a result the education has become a means not just to know things but to elevate poverty. Okay. Desire for knowledge is universal, it is constrained by poverty, makes sense, but education without a purpose is not a genuine education. Okay. Desire for knowledge, it does not talk about that property, this poverty thing. Okay. It misses the poverty part, that removal of poverty. This is missing here, and in this desire for knowledge part is missing in this. Okay. So there are three things: knowledge, desire for knowledge. One is genuine education. Third is poverty, stopping this. this genuine education. Okay, so in these one part knowledge is missing, in this the poverty aspect is missing. Now we are left with options B and D. The desire for knowledge is universal, although it is constrained by poverty. Education without purpose is not genuine education. If you look at this, desire for knowledge is universal, that is fine. Constrained by poverty is also fine. Education without a purpose is not genuine education. It says education for a particular purpose is not education. Okay, without a purpose. So it says education without a purpose is not genuine education. Now there is a very thin line between options B and D, right? It says that, see, there are three aspects: knowledge, desire for knowledge, okay, genuine education and poverty. So these 2 points cover both the aspects about this genuine education. Humans poverty that is restricting the desire for knowledge. So all 3 things have been mentioned. But it says, this one says education without a purpose is not a genuine education. It says without a purpose. Education for a particular purpose. There is a difference, fine difference between these two. So it's एक में है कि एजुकेशन का पर्पस ही नहीं होता, एक में कहते हैं एक पर्पस होता है with a particular purpose. Now let us read the passage. It says that many people considered highly educated are actually completely uneducated. Work these require a definition of educated that includes instrumental motives, right? As a means to end the wealth. So you are studying as a means to the end of wealth or prestige. So basically the passage says humans study with one purpose. That is not the true motive of education. So the passage talks about one purpose, one particular purpose. The purpose is to remove poverty, to gain wealth and prestige, right? This point says education without a purpose. Without a purpose means you are studying without any purpose, but you have one purpose. Your purpose is to become wealthy and popular. Okay, so that is why this is the correct one. It covers all the aspects. It covers the knowledge part, that knowledge, desire for knowledge is universal. It also covers that poverty is restricting this desire for knowledge, and it covers that part also, that education with a particular purpose is not a true education. It says without a purpose, and it truly captures that with a particular purpose. So you have one particular purpose over here. So here's the next one. It is based on stress. So read it and answer the right summary. So it says stress in moderation is not harmful but motivating. Okay, cortisol is a stress hormone, cycles daily, synchronizing with sunlight. It helps arouse for the day. In health, the hormone spikes when we need to pay attention. So basically it says that stress in moderation is motivating, okay, is not harmful. So at times we need to have stress, like for example, if you have to pay attention, you need to have stress. If you are stress free, then you are not able to achieve certain things in life, right? If you do not have exam stress at all, you will end up doing bad in the examination. You will not sincerely study for the exam and then later repent, which happens with most of the people, right? अब अभी लोग सीरियस नहीं हो एग्जाम को लेके, ठीक है, अभी कैट है, नवंबर में है, अक्टूबर से पढ़ाई स्टार्ट करेंगे, 2-3 महीने, दे विल सर्च कैन आई क्रैक कैट इन 2 to 3 months, सारे वो वीडियोस देखते हैं, राइट? सो इफ़ यू जस्ट प्रोक्रेस्टिनेट, डू नॉट वर्क अपॉन योर गोल्स, आई मीन इट इज़ नॉट हेल्पफुल, राइट? सो यू मस्ट हैव सम स्ट्रेस. ऐसा नहीं कि बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रेस हो, बट देयर शुड बी सम स्ट्रेस विच इज़ हेल्दी इफ इट इज़ मॉडरेशन, इन मॉडरेशन. सो if you pay attention, a test, a job, interview, a date, for all these things you tend to perform good. Studies on rodents and humans confirm that brief mild increases in stress are good for the brain, particularly for memory. So memory can be boosted with mild stress, right? If there is mild stress, during these spikes neurons are born and expanded in the hippocampus, the seahorse-shaped finger of tissue responsible for forming new memories and understanding three-dimensional space, and rodents learn better. So an experiment was conducted on rodents, which can be seen that similar results can be shown on humans as well. Okay, the students who get stressed while studying is more alert and remembers more than the one who feels no urgency up to a point. Okay, so it gives that a person who gets stressed is more alert and remembers more. So if there is moderate stress, people tend to perform well because of improved memory. Okay, this part, this hippocampus and all neurons, you do not have to go into the scientific things, right? What is hippocampus and all? Just understand the gist that if there is certain amount of stress, it is good for us, moderate amount of stress. Now reading further, it says that the problem comes when the stress is either too intense and at one moment as in a rape or violent attack, or too sustained as in long-term poverty, neglect or abuse. So when does stress become negative? It becomes either it is too intense, like when at one moment. So sometimes people like for example, let's say there is a rape incident of a rape or violent attack. People are stressed to extreme level of trauma. So that is very dangerous. So if the stress becomes too intense to that level, okay, suppose you attack, get a traumatic attack, right? That's when the stress becomes too problematic, or sustained or too sustained. Like for example, too intense at one moment. So at one moment it becomes too stressful. Let us say you meet with an accident. Okay, so it shatters you, right? It's very intense moment of stress at one single moment. Or if it is a very sustained period of time, let's say poverty, neglect or abuse, right? Let's say a person is facing child abuse, okay, and that is for a sustained period. Poverty for a sustained period. So if the stress is for a very long duration or too intense for a particular moment, in those cases stress is harmful. Moderate stress is good, where too intense or prolonged stress is bad. So that's what the gist of the passage is, right? It says that stress is harmful in two scenarios: if it is for too intense at one moment or for a prolonged period of time. But if it is moderation, it is beneficial for us. That's what the passage says. Stress is harmful only in extreme situations and does not affect daily activities like, so it is against, right? It is harmful only in extreme situations. This part is fine. Does not affect daily activities, it is wrong. Okay, it affects daily activities. So this is wrong. This part is wrong. It affects daily activities if it is in moderation. Second says brief spikes in stress hinder memory formation. Again it's strict. ठीक है, opposite क्या रहा है? It says that it improves memory, right? And in the hippocampus, while chronic stress is more detrimental. Yes, chronic stress is detrimental. What is chronic stress? Too sustained stress. So chronic stress is detrimental, that is fine, but this is wrong. It says that it improves memory formation. Okay? It is not hindering, it is against what is mentioned in the passage. C says stress can be a double-edged sword. Moderate stress can help us focus and learn, but too much stress can be damaging. Double-edged sword. What is double-edged sword? Something that can be harmful and like it is on both sides, right? So if you like increase, it can be on the negative side. Like if it is very high or too low, it is what double-edged sword means. It is harmful on either ends. So if it becomes too less, right, people will be carefree, they would not be productive. And if it becomes too much, okay, it can be damaging that way also. So moderate stress is helpful for focusing and learning. So that's what essentially captures it. But let's see the other one also. It says cortisol, a stress hormone, plays a complex role in memory. While it can increase focus during short-term stressful events, it can also disrupt memory consolidation in the long run. See, in the long run, it does not talk about memory. Okay? Short term में memory की बात कर रहे हैं, but long run, how it impacts, it is not talking about the memory aspect. Okay? Again, it is specific to this stress hormone. The passage is not just about the stress hormone, it is about the stress as a whole. Okay? So it disrupt memory consolidation in the long run, it is not mentioned in the passage. For short run, for a short mild stress, it improves memory, but like what happens in the long run, we are not given the consequences. We have just mentioned that in that case the stress is harmful. So option C is the right summary. Okay, so here's the next one. It says that cultures from the ancient world not only had unique gods and monsters, but unique narrative traditions also. Indian narratives forms are radically different from Western forms. Seeger writes, there's an author Seeger, he says that Indian narratives are different from Western. Watch a Bollywood movie, one moment the film is a romance, then a thriller, then a musical, then a martial arts movie. Confusing for a Western audience, but natural for an Indian audience. So Indian movies are filled with twists and turns, like sometimes it is romance, sometimes it is thrill, sometimes it is some other thing, right? So everything is mixed in it. He defines that these narratives forms an eminently comfortable with complexity, non-linearity and non-binary nature of being. Okay, so Indians are comfortable with complex, non-linearity and non-binary nature. Non-binary means, binary nature means good or bad. Okay, Western movies, a person is good, a person is bad. Right? In India, mix of all things. Where hero's journey deals in dualities, with the protagonist abandoning one worldview in favor of another, defeating the dragon or being defeated by it. So it says that the binary nature, either he defeats the dragon or gets defeated by it, as simple as that. Either you win or you lose, right? But Indian stories are a mix of lot of things, right? So Indian narratives are mix of lot of things and they are quite complicated. So it says Indian stories shaped by Hinduism and Buddhism do not typically present their conflicts in the framework of a choice. So here they have a choice that either it is good or bad. Okay, so there are only two things, right? But in Indian narratives, it is mix of too many things. So first is Bollywood movies showcase the confusing nature of Indian narratives, which are full of action and adventure compared to simpler Western narratives. Yes, it is partially true, but it covers only that movies aspect. ठीक है सर, Bollywood movies तक limited है. Does it talk only about Bollywood movies? No, it is beyond that. So it talks about the cultures also. ठीक है, it is not only related to movies, it talks about Indian and Western cultures in general. Okay, so it is partially true. Okay, it covers one part that these Bollywood movies showcase confusing nature of narratives. And Western culture is simple. Okay, so Western movies are simple and their narratives are you can say that binary, good or bad. Indian narratives influenced by Hinduism and Buddhism are complex. Indian narratives are complex, true, non-linear and non-binary, unlike the dualistic and linear Western narratives. So it covers the things entirely, and it also includes this aspect that why it is complex, right? Because they are shaped by Hinduism and Buddhism. यहाँ भी कह रहे हैं shaped by Hinduism and Buddhism, right? And in the beginning also it talks about that cultures from the ancient world not only had unique gods and monsters. So it talks about some gods and monsters. Maybe this is taken from some mid of a passage. So it talks about that. It might be about the how these narratives have been developed. How do we have these mixed sort of narratives rather than just these binary dualistic narratives. Ancient cultures had unique gods and monsters and their stories reflected these unique elements. Yes, I mean the part before this passage would have talked about this thing, but this passage does not talk about just this thing. This is basically the summary of the first line, right? The entire passage, the remaining passage talks about India versus West, complex narratives versus simple narratives. So that is not the correct summary. Movies present clear good versus evil conflicts, whereas Indian narratives highlight the complexity of human nature to avoid simple choices. Indian narratives show complexity of human nature, but which movies? Right? This clear good versus evil conflicts. यहाँ पे तो कोई ऐसी movies की बात ही नहीं हो रही. They are talking about the type of movies mentioned here is Bollywood movies, right? They have not mentioned Western movies also. Okay, so it does not specify which movies. Plus, it is again bringing back the attention to just to limit it to movies versus the culture. Okay. So this is a broader one. It says Indian narratives are complex, non-linear and non-binary. And why it is that reason? Because they are influenced by Hinduism and Buddhism. Okay, they have conflicting nature. Okay, they are complex, non-linear and non-binary, and the Western narratives are dualistic and linear in nature. So that is the correct summary. Okay, so I hope you are enjoying this session and learning ways to answer para summary questions and enjoying these quality questions of this series. So please don't forget to like this video. Let's move to the next one. It is about, you must have heard of Oppenheimer. Read this and answer the summary. This says, once it became clear that the enormous energy contained in the atomic nucleus could be used to build a bomb, and that Nazi Germany might well be doing just that, President Franklin Roosevelt approved a major American effort to beat them to it, the Manhattan Project. Okay, so when like people feared that Germany might be building the atomic bomb, Franklin Roosevelt approved this, the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was the project that dealt with the creation of this atomic bomb. Okay, it came as a surprise to everyone when General Leslie Groves tapped Robert as a director. So Robert Oppenheimer, like the word Oppenheimer is not mentioned here, but if you've watched the movie, if you've read history, you know we are talking about Robert Oppenheimer. Okay, so he was appointed as the he was the physicist, right? If you watched the movie on him, right? So he was the physicist and he was the director of this Manhattan Project. So General Leslie Groves appointed Robert as the director. Seemingly overnight, the ethereal young man who enjoyed reading poetry in Sanskrit became the ringleader of the most concentrated collection of brilliant minds ever assembled. Scientists summoned from around the world to a makeshift lab on the desolate New Mexico Mesa, where they would build an atomic bomb to stop Hitler. So basically this presents a historical narrative wherein Robert Oppenheimer was made the director of Project Manhattan, and he was then a scholar, right? It says that he was studying poetry in Sanskrit. This means that he was a scholarly person, and people were surprised that such a young person was given this leadership, and then they basically shifted to this thing. Okay, so now it says that the Manhattan Project was an initiative to build a bomb to stop Hitler, with Robert, a poetry lover, surprisingly appointed as the director by General Leslie Groves. Okay, so it says that it was an initiative to build a bomb to stop Hitler. Yes, the objective of Manhattan Project was to stop Hitler. Okay, so yes, the objective is mentioned, that the build objective was there. Robert was a poetry lover. Yes, it says that he enjoyed reading poetry in Sanskrit, so he was a scholar, he was interested in this. Surprisingly appointed, so people were surprised that he was appointed as a director by General Leslie Groves. So this covers these things. Let's see others. The atomic bomb's destructive potential was discovered, prompting the Manhattan Project's creation to counter Nazi Germany's possible development. So it does not talk about potential, discovery of potential. It talks about clear that the enormous energy contained in the atomic. So this was discovered, but it misses the appointment of director part. This is also a surprising element, surprise to everyone, that is appointment of Robert as the director. So this part is missing. Yeah, that surprise element is, appointment part is missing in this. Yeah, that has to be an important part, because appointment of director was a big change, right? So that is missing here. The Manhattan Project, a top secret American program to build an atomic bomb before Nazi Germany, was led by the brilliant scientist Oppenheimer. It was led by the scientist, but again this appointment part is missing in this. Okay, and also the surprise element, that the passage says that it was surprising for the entire world because he was Robert Oppenheimer was present. Like, see, first of all, Oppenheimer word is not present in the passage. Okay, suppose let's say you do not know about Oppenheimer. Okay, let's say I do not read history. Okay, I have no idea who was Oppenheimer. Okay, Robert Oppenheimer. The word Oppenheimer is not present. So again this becomes wrong because Oppenheimer is never mentioned in the passage. कहीं Oppenheimer लिखा ही नहीं है. So you cannot use your external knowledge. Second thing is the appointment part is missing. That was a surprise element that he was appointed. Right? There were several, like he was a young man. Right? It says that seemingly overnight the ethereal young man who, like, he was interested in poetry, he may not have been had a very great interest on this field, was appointed the director. So that was the surprise element is missing. The Manhattan Project, aimed at building a bomb to stop Hitler, was led by a team of poets and artists. It never said that it was led by a team of poets and artists. You're absolutely wrong. Yes, Robert was interested in poetry, but that does not mean that the entire team was made up of poet and artist. So this is the right one. So it basically says the person who was interested in poetry and he was appointed the director. So that was a shocking thing. And this project Manhattan was initiated to build atomic bomb before Germany could make it. Okay, so that is, it covers all the important incidents, narratives present in the passage. The average human spends at least 1/4 of their life growing up. In the careful calculus of the animal kingdom, this is patently ridiculous. So it says that it is ridiculous that humans spend 1/4 of their life for growing up. Even most whales, the longest of the long-lived mammals, spend a mere 10% or so of the time growing into leviathans. Leviathans is a sea monster. Okay, so if you do not know this sea monster, maybe you could just imagine that when they grow up into a large whale. Okay, so even the whales consume just 10%. So what does it mean that humans take 25% of their lives to grow up? Okay, even other animals compared to even blue whales, okay, they take just 10%. So that means among those all the creatures present on earth, humans take most long to grow up in comparison to their lifespan. In no other primate has the mathematics gone this wrong, but then again no other primate has been as successful as we are in dominating the planet. Could the secret to our species success be our slowness in growing up? And if so, what possible evolutionary benefit could there be to delaying adulthood? And what does it mean for where our species is going? So basically the author is relating that possibly due to this slowness in which we grow, that is the reason we are the most successful creatures on the planet. Okay, so successful on dominating the planet, it could be related to the slowness in growing up. So that is the gist of the passage. Okay, humans take the most time to grow up. They take about 1/4 of their life to grow up. Okay, so let's say human lifespan is of 80 years. So for 20 years you are growing up from a child to an adult. Whereas in other animals, this duration is quite less. Even in the case of whales, it is just 10%. But at the same time, we see that the humans are the most successful creatures on the planet. So the author questions that, is there a correlation? Okay? So the author, see, if you see question marks, right? Could the secret to our species success be our slowness in growing up? The author is not concluding. The author is questioning, right? Is there a possibility? So let us look at the summaries. It says humans spend the largest amount of life growing up, and this factor has made humans successful and dominant over the other species on the planet. Yes, humans spend the largest amount of life growing up. That is true. And this factor has made humans, it is saying that it is a certainty. Okay? So, no, it does not mention that it is certain. Okay? That is not the reason. Could be a reason. It could be a reason. The author questions it. The author does not claim that this is the reason. Second one says, the ridiculous amount of time that humans take to grow up is a signal of successful evolution. Okay, ridiculous amount of time, signal of, not, again it is not saying that it is a direct signal. It could be a possibility. So it talks about the possibility. So again, that is not looked to be true. C says humans amongst all species spend the largest amount of life growing up. Okay, it is clearly mentioned that it is it says that it spend the largest amount of time. Okay, that is mentioned here. Slowness in growing up. It says in no other primate has the mathematics gone this long. So basically it says that in humans spend the largest amount of time, largest proportion of their lifespan in growing up. Okay? So it basically covers this aspect. Humans spend the largest amount of life growing up. That is not mentioned here. Okay? Ridiculous amount of time. Yes, ridiculous, fine. And this amount of time, although ridiculous, may explain why they are successful. So it may be an explanation, right? Because we spend a lot of time growing up, we have built maybe a strong foundation so that we are successful. So it may explain. So may means possibility, right? See, other two options talk about a certainty. We are not mentioning any of the certainty here, right? So it may be an explanation. So that looks to be an appropriate summary. The longer the delay of adulthood, the greater the evolutionary benefit for humans and other species. Again, this is bringing a conclusive thing. See, it is not a conclusion that humans spend like the highest amount of time in growing up, that is why they are successful. It is not. The passage questions this possibility. Okay, so we cannot conclude on it. So all other statements talk about the conclusion. They are taking out the conclusion that since humans spend the largest amount of time, they are successful. Okay, so that is not a conclusion. So here's the next one. It says that as we saw in the very public responses of politicians and leaders across the planet, those who were able to work with and in a state of not knowing ended up appearing far more in touch with the reality. They did not make promises they could not keep and were better able to respond to what was emerging in a rapidly changing crisis. To offer just two examples, compare Jacinda Ardern and Donald Trump. It's hard to find a bigger contrast in modern leadership than these two in humility, humanity, collaborative practice, and the ability to respond rather than react. Okay, I leave you to draw your conclusions, but merely ask that you use these circumstances and examples to make that judgment rather than leaping to conclusions, which is where the armory of silver bullets is often to be found. Okay, so it says that so it says that you need to be it says that if you read this armory of silver bullets is often to be found. Silver bullet, basically it's a phrase which means easy solution. Okay, like you have bullet as an easy solution to kill someone, isn't it? So silver bullet here refers to easy solution. So it basically says, if you read this, we saw that in the very public responses of politicians and leaders across the planet, those who were able to work with and in a state of not knowing. Okay, so basically those who did not know much and they ended up appearing far more in touch with the reality. So who had they were more realistic than the ones who knew about different stuff. Okay, they did not make promises that could not keep and were better able to respond. So basically they did not make promises. Generally what happens is leaders make promises that we will do this, we will do that. They did not make much promises but ended up doing more for their country. Okay, so better able to respond with what was emerging in a rapidly changing crisis. So they were better responding to the changes compared to the ones who were making promises. Okay, so that's what it says. To offer just two examples, compare Jacinda Ardern and Donald Trump. It's hard to find a bigger contrast in modern leadership. So they are contrasting leadership styles of Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand and Donald Trump of USA. So contrasting Jacinda Ardern of that part, wherein they did not promise much but ended up becoming good. Whereas on the other hand, Donald Trump had promised a lot of stuff, okay, and knew a lot of things, right? So not knowing, so basically if you are like with less experience, you are able to handle situations better, right? So it compares these two kind of leadership styles. They were like they had contrasted in humility, humanity, collaborative practice, and the ability to respond rather than react. So like if you talk about Arden, right? So Arden had this ability to respond. So if you remember, there were a lot of changes that she brought in the country, and even if you remember, there was terrorist attack also during her phase. So how did she respond to it in a positive manner rather than react? So on the other hand, Trump is of the sort who reacts fast, okay. So basically one is person ability to respond, another one has the ability to react, okay. So these are the people who are successful. They respond to situations, they do not make promises, they do not make promise, but they were able to better respond to emergency, like crisis. Okay? So if you do not promise much, but you are more responsive to crisis, that makes you a successful leader. Okay, so that's what it says. So you should be able to make judgment rather than leaping to conclusions. So that's what it is about. So it says that leaders like Jacinda Ardern and Donald Trump show that working with uncertainty is ineffective. It is opposite. It's saying that working with uncertainty is effective. It says that it talks about uncertainty, not knowing. Not knowing means uncertainty. And the passage says that working with uncertainty has been effective because they end up doing much better than, like they are much closer to the reality and end up doing good, right? So it is wrong. Jacinda Ardern and Donald Trump are modern leaders who like the importance of humility, humanity and collaborative practice in responding to crisis. They are not, see, they are contrasting people. Okay, only one of them presents this. So even if you do not know who is which type, let's say you do not know, you have no idea about world politics, you know who is, you do not even know who is Jacinda Ardern or Donald Trump, you do not know who has which character, this you can definitely eliminate because the passage says that they have contrasting characteristics. So it says that both of them highlight the importance. One of them highlights, another does not. Okay. The author itself writes here, I leave you to draw your conclusions. So it means the author is not specifying who is who. It's we that who have the knowledge about these two people, we are concluding it. Even if you did not have knowledge about these two people, not to worry about, this is not what the passage says. Politicians who make promises they cannot keep tend to react, then respond to crisis, okay, as seen in the contrasting leadership styles of Donald Ardern and Donald Trump. Okay, so it says politicians who make promises they cannot keep tend to react. Now here we are like, so it says that there is one category of people who react and another category of people who respond. The passage primarily does not deal with this kind of people. Okay, it does not deal with this kind of people. So yes, you can say that the leaders who cannot tend to react rather than to respond to crisis, that is true, and there are contrasting styles in these two people, but that is not the main essence. D says politicians who work with uncertainty and avoid making unkeepable promises are more in touch with reality. So this aspect was not covered in the previous point, that why are these people successful? Because they are more in touch with reality. Okay, so they do not make any specific promises, they avoid such promises and are more realistic, and hence they tend to perform better, and it is exemplified by contrasting Jacinda Ardern and Donald Trump's leadership style. So this can be seen these through leadership styles. So if mentioning of these two names, Jacinda Ardern and Donald Trump's, their leadership styles is important, which is mentioned subsequently in the passage. Okay, so this part was missing, that why are these people better at governing? Because they are more in touch with reality, because they do not make false promises and are more realistic. Okay, So this is a better summary than this one. Now this is another one. It says that in a paper published in 2004, David Wendler and Franklin Miller argued that patients can be deceived. If they agree to be deceived, they argue that patients might consent to being deceived without being told what they are being deceived about. Patients might be told something like, you should be aware that the investigators have intentionally left out information about certain aspects of the study. I don't find their argument convincing. To give consent, you need only be deceived about matters that would not affect their willingness to participate. But how can we know in advance whether someone would affect patients' willingness to participate without asking them first? Their argument seems to rely on an incorrect and paternalistic premise that the doctors can guess what might affect patients' willingness to participate. So it is about like there are some patients, and you have to basically it could be something like some psychological treatment, okay, wherein you are presenting, you're deceiving the patients, okay. So it says that like there is a paper which is published by this person, these two people, that patients can be deceived if they agree to be deceived, okay. So there should be an agreement. The patient, it is unethical to deceive the people, okay. So they should be told that they are being deceived, right. So they should, the consent should be taken, and in order to give consent, you must know that you are consenting to. So it says that, but how can we know in advance whether something would affect patients' willingness to participate without asking them? So doctors, like we are assuming that doctors can guess what might affect patients. So let us say, so let us understand through a simple example. Let's say you are playing a game, okay, and you are not given the rules. Like you are saying that you have to play a game, and you are not told the rules. So it is unethical, right? You should know the rules. Now they argue that the doctors assume that it is like they should be given a consent. It says that the people should be given a consent, and then only they should be deceived, right? Now let's say if you are playing a game and you are not given the rules, and the person who is conducting the game assumes that it is not going to harm you, okay, as long as now this is your assumption. You do not think from the player's point of view that whether it is harmful to that person or not. So same thing goes here. So they are patients, you are deceiving the patients without telling them they are being deceived. So you have to take consent. Now the question is, how will they know that they should take consent for this? So basically you are deceiving the patient, maybe in a psychological treatment or sort of thing, wherein you have to deceive the patient. But you have to ask the patient, take the consent of the patient that you are being deceived. And then there is an argument that as long as the patients, the circumstances are not, so it says, respond by noting that patients in these circumstances can only be deceived about matters that not affect their willingness to participate. Okay, so basically it is asking that in what matters. Let us say if you tell a patient that like you will be deceived, and a patient, but it is beneficial for the patient, but the patient does not give consent. So that is why doctors assume that basically the gist is the doctors assume on their own that whether a patient should be deceived or not. Okay, so let's see the summaries. It says the authors argue that patients should never be deceived. No, it does not say that it should never be deceived. They should be deceived at times in clinical studies. Wendler and Miller argue that patients can give consent to being deceived in studies. Yes, it says they can give consent to being in studies, but the critique highlights the issue of informed consent and questions the validity of their assumption. So it sounds good. There is some validity of their assumption. Assumption क्या है कि the doctors know that in which clinical trials the patients should be deceived, and they know that it is not harmful for the patients. So this basically captures this summary. Wendler and Muller believe that patients do not need to be informed. No, they do not believe that they should be informed. Okay, but their argument fails because this disregards the importance of patient autonomy. So they need to be informed. They have to be informed. Their consent should be taken in clinical trials. The passage highlights the importance of transparency in clinical studies. Yes, it highlights that in clinical studies there should be transparency, and argues that patients should always be fully informed. Again, always be fully informed. These are strong ones. So ये option A भी बहुत strong है, और this is also never be deceived भी, this is strong. So basically A and D are strong options and can be eliminated, because it says that in some cases you can deceive them. It is not always that there should be transparency. Some cases you can deceive them as long as their consent is there. But how is that consent taken? That is a question, right? The author is basically questioning it. The critique highlights the issue of informed consent and the questions the validity of their assumption. So in some cases of clinical trial, you can deceive these. So like the patients may not be fully informed about the practice, okay, but in which cases, that is still questionable, because the assumption is that the doctors know which are the cases which are good and which are not good for the patients. So the answer is option B. So in case you are preparing for CAT and other MBA entrance tests, we have launched this mock pack. So you can purchase our CAT mock separately or get our CAT mock bundle, CAT and OMETs mock bundle, and you can use code HOT to get 20% off till the end of this month. So here are a couple of questions for you to answer in the comments of this video. You can take a screenshot of the same and read these two passages and answer the questions. And do let me know in the comments that how many questions you got right in today's class, and did you enjoy the session or not. Okay, so I hope this session would have helped you how to answer para summary questions, and if you find a question quite tricky one, like the last one was a difficult one, so in that case you can choose to skip those ones. Okay, it is not necessary to answer all these questions, because I consider that this is one of the most difficult question types in VARC, because the options are quite close, but technically you should go by elimination. Your answer should resonate with the tone of the passage and should cover all the important aspects that are mentioned in the passage. So it should cover all the major points. It should not be contradictory. It should not be too generic or too specific. Avoid strong options. So these are certain things that you need to keep in mind while answering para summary questions. So I hope you enjoyed this session on para summary. Please keep watching this hot summer series for all 30 days, and I'm sure that it will benefit you a lot in your preparation. Thanks again for watching this video. Have a great day. Goodbye.